Welcome to today's lecture on Mughal administration in India. This lesson has been divided into three parts: central administration, provincial administration, and district and local administration. We take up one by one for discussion. Central administration. The establishment of the Mughal Empire in the second quarter of the 17th century symbolizes a landmark in Indian administration. Though the victory of Babur in 1528 laid the foundation for Mughal administration, yet it was during Akbar's rule, that is between 1556 AD, that the Mughal government acquired a concrete shape and the administrative setup was properly organized. In Mughal administration, the king was the source and center of all power and authority. The central administration was carried on with the help of the prime minister, the departmental heads, the central exchequer, and the civil servants. The king. The king was considered as a sovereign, and sovereignty was considered to be hereditary and indivisible. The entire administrative machinery revolved around the king, who was viewed as a father figure or a despot by his people. Most of the time, the king was seen as a benevolent despot who worked for the welfare of his people. Monarchy was upheld based on the theory of the divine right to rule. The king was powerful and supreme. He was a source of all authority and the fountainhead of justice. Everything, therefore, depended upon the character and the personality of the king. According to Abul Fazl, a monarch, because of his divine nature, possesses, besides others, the following qualities: paternal love towards its subjects, large heart, trust in God, and prayer. The important officials in the central administrative system were Vakil. He was regarded as the regent of the emperor's lieutenant in all matters connected with royal household. He headed the council and ensured that all matters of policy were executed properly. He was also responsible for the promotion and degradation, appointments, and dismissals of various functionaries. The office of the Vakil enjoyed the highest status during the early years of Akbar, when Bairam Khan was appointed as the tutor guardian to Akbar and also as his Vakil or deputy. He was empowered to exercise all sovereign powers in the name of the minor emperor. In the later days of Akbar, the status of Vakil was reduced to a large extent because Bairam Khan abused the vast powers that were conferred on him. The Wazir or the High Diwan, Diwan-e-Ola, was the next official in the hierarchy. He functioned as the prime minister and also as the head of the Department of Finance. As the head of the revenue department, he supervised the revenue collection and expenditure in all parts of the empire and submitted his extracts to the emperor every day as the chief executive officer of the state. In addition to his revenue power, he had control over the province and the provincial officers, from the governor to the patwari. His seal and signature were necessary for the authentication of most of the financial documents. As the head of the revenue department, he was assisted by the following departmental heads: Diwani Khalsa for Khalsa lands, Diwani Tan for cash salaries, Diwani Jagir for salaries in revenue assignment, Diwani Tawazi for military accounts, Diwani Buyuta, accounts of the Department of Mir Saman, Karkhana, etc. Diwani Sadat, accounts relating to religious departments, Khazana, treasury; Mustafi, auditor; Mushrif, chief accountant; Mir Bakshi, an important central minister was the Mir Bakshi, who was the paymaster general of the empire and also the minister in charge of the military department. The important duties of the Mir Bakshi were certifying payment of all the mansabdars of all ranks, including the high officers of the state; summoning mansabdars in times of wars and providing them with adequate supplies; making arrangement for the stay during the tour of the empire. In his work, he was assisted by three other Bakshis who looked after clearly defined spheres of activity. Provincial administration. The Mughal Empire was divided into territorial subdivisions called the Subas. The division was determined mainly on the consideration of military strategy and administrative convenience arising out of the uniformity of nature of province. The boundaries and subdivisions of the Subas were never rigid and very frequently changes were made in them. The newly acquired territories took some time before they could be brought under full control with more systematized administration and minutely developed subdivisions. At the head of the province was the Subadar or the governor. He was also called the Sifasalar or the Nazim. He was appointed by an imperial order and was given the ensign of office and instrument of instructions, which defined his powers, functions, and responsibilities. The Subadar was thus held responsible for the general supervision, maintenance of law and order, economic prosperity, and defense of the province. His being the overall responsibility, he was allowed a good deal of initiative, and during certain times the governors could act independently to the maximum extent possible, notwithstanding various checks and controlling agencies operating on them. The other officers in the province were the provincial diwan. The provincial diwan was the second officer next to the governor, but not directly subordinate to him, rather his rival in the province. He was appointed, transferred, or dismissed by the headquarters. He was responsible to the center from where he received orders directly, and he submitted his accounts directly to the central authority. He was the head of the graded services on the revenue side, from Amal Guzar to the Patwari and Patel. The provincial diwan was assisted by various officers: the Peshkar, secretary; the Daroga, office superintendent cum Mansabdar; the Munshif, head clerk; and the Tahvildar, Daftare Khana, treasurer, among other officers. The provincial Sadar. The Sadar was another important officer in the provincial government directly appointed by the center. He was primarily responsible for looking after the religious interest. His duties included supervision and distribution of grants, promotion and learning, and settling disputes. The provincial Khaji, the judicial department of the Suba, was under the Khaji of the province. Generally, at the provincial level, the functions of the Sadar and Khaji were combined into one, the provincial Bakshi. The organization of army and Mansabdari system had considerably increased the importance of the office of Mir Bakshi in the center. But the posting of Mansabdars and the army in different provinces had necessitated the creation of the counterpart of the Mir Bakshi in the provinces to act like a link. between center and the province. He was appointed on the recommendation of Mir Bakshi. The provincial Bakshi served as this link. His duties included recruitment of soldiers, maintenance of troops, passing the pay bills of the Mansabdars and the soldiers, preparing the list of properties of Mansabdars, etc. District and local administration. The Suba or province was divided into sarkars, which were further subdivided into parganas. A group of parganas were called the chaklas. The parganas were further divided into villages. Sarkar. The sarkar was headed by the Fauzdar. He was the executive head of the sarkar, and in that capacity, he had to discharge multifarious duties. The basic duties were the maintenance of law and order, assisting the amils, the collection of revenue, and protecting frontiers of the rural areas in his sarkar. The most important officer in the sarkar was the Amalguzar or Amil. He was responsible for the working of entire revenue department of the subdivision and function under the district supervision and instructions of the provincial diwan, the Kotwal. He was the magisterial officer of the sarkar. He was appointed by the center on the recommendation of the Mir Atish. His main duties were to keep a general watch over the town, punish the miscreants, and redress the grievances of the citizens and maintain a register of all the people in the town. The Kotwal of the Sarkar also acted as a senior criminal magistrate over the Shikdar of a Paragana, and if his headquarters town happened to be a post, he also acted as customs officers and magistrate. For the effective control, the Kotwal was required to divide the Sarkar into wards, Mahalla, and to nominate one of the responsible officials as Mir Mahalla, street chief. Besides the policing duties, the Kotwal has to regulate the markets, prevent the hoarding by the rich, and to ensure proper weights and measures were used by the dealers. He was also required to look after the morals of the public by preventing manufacture of liquors and by providing separate quarters for all public women and prostitutes. He kept a close watch on such elements, including those persons who frequented these quarters. Qazi. The main function of the Qazi was the administration of justice. He also controlled the various funds for religious purposes. The Paraganas. The Suba was divided into Paraganas, which can be regarded as the most important administrative subdivision in the Mughal administration. The Pargana had three important officers, the Shikdar, the Amil, and the Kanungo, who were assisted in the discharge of their duties by a staff consisting of the treasurer, clerks, patwaris, and peons. Shikdar. The executive head of the Paragana was the Shikdar, and in the Paragana, he performed the combined functions of the Fauzdar and the Kotwal in the Suba, that is, in the Paragana. He was in charge of law and order as well as the criminal justice. Being the executive head, he was in charge of the general administration, and as such, he was the representative of the government. One of his chief duties was to assist Amil in the realization of the revenue whenever force became necessary. Qazi. The Qazi was another important government officer, assisted mainly with the administration of justice. He performs the same functions as the Qazi of the Suba villages. The village as a unit was recognized by local government. It was regarded as an autonomous institution in which the villages themselves looked after their interest. The organization of village life and the observation of the accepted code of conduct were maintained through the village panchayat. The panchayat looked after education, sanitary, and relief work. It also arranged festivals and settled disputes of the village. The Mughals upheld the earlier traditions in political and administrative matters. The administrative system was centralized and personalized. There was an elaborate network of officials at the center constituting the central secretariat, which was repeated at the provincial and local levels. In total control of the state was the emperor. Land revenue was the principal source of income. The civil services were more efficient than their Mauryan counterparts. The Mughals accepted merit as one of the principles for recruitment. However, the judicial system was under executive domination and it was poorly structured. It can be said without doubt that there was a highly developed system of centralized and personalized public administration even during the ancient and medieval times. The Ardhashastra and several texts on administration during the medieval times prove this point. But this does not mean that there was no local administration. There were hundreds of officers with special responsibilities at the center, state, and local levels. Therefore, the roots of administration can be traced to ancient times. These can serve as useful pieces of source materials for scholars of public administration as well as for modern administrators.